Here we go.
It is Wednesday, I think. And it's a foggy
Are you
one.
still in the lose track of days mindset?
My schedule's been wonky, but,
Yeah.
you know, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, part of the other thing about this time of year, winter blues. Do you experience it at all? Do you deal with it, winter blues?
Yes.
January?
But I wouldn't say
After
it's
the
too
holidays?
extreme. I would
Okay.
say yes.
A little bit
because
of...
I am daydreaming and thinking about summer, and in my mind, summer's going to start tomorrow. So that's where my mindset is, yeah.
Well, when we were going over on Good Day Chicago, this was yesterday, they released part of the summer lineup happening over here at Millennium Park underneath the canopy there.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about.
Isn't it? Booking,
Picnic,
like,
you know,
stuff
right,
this
steps
far
away
out.
from the bean right there.
Yeah, that's where my mind is.
Natalie was just moments ago interviewing a happiness specialist who was talking about the need to give yourself a hug, to smile in the morning, to kind of cue your unconscious.
Give yourself a hug.
Give yourself a hug.
Oh,
like that.
really? Really? Okay, yeah.
That was her advice, but we're going to be speaking in just a couple moments about adolescence and the winter blues
That's hard.
well. I do experience a little bit of a lull, I would say, right around this time of year. It's not hitting quite yet this year, but late January, when it really gets tough, the holidays are kind of in the rearview mirror. There's still a lot of time before spring break. I have found, I don't have any like expert tips or anything, but I always find that when you have something on the calendar to look forward to, kind of like a marker, hey, that weekend, it's a long weekend, we're going to do X, Y, Z, that helps me during the tough months of the winter. And you know, that's the one thing that kind of tends to work for me.
I feel like when I get the blues, I just exercise.
Oh.
I just exercise. Because
Yeah.
I feel like it's a lot of pent-up energy that we can't expend. So is that the right word? Expend?
Yeah,
Expend your energy?
so.
So just pumping the muscles or going for a jog, and then you just get those endorphins going.
I agree.
But we're going to be talking to an expert because, you know, for adolescents who are stuck inside, stuck on their screens a lot,
Yeah.
They can get in a sad, if not depressed mood in the winter. And if you're a parent, it just breaks your heart. So we're going to try to find some helpful tips for you.
My dad always says,
through.
you're only as happy as your least happy
It's
kid.
true.
So when your kids, it affects us too, selfishly.
Absolutely.
You want your kiddos to be happy. And 13 million Americans suffer the seasonal affective disorder. I don't think that necessarily, we're not just talking about teenagers, but 13 million, that's a lot of folks.
Yeah, of course.
that
You know,
deal
that's
with
why we
it.
buy those sun lamps and things like that. We're going to be talking about the Bears game, the biggest Bears game in over a decade. So we're going to be talking to the Chicago Sports Bums.
Been a minute since we were in the playoffs. Ben Johnson talking about this is kind of the start of a new season. Can't wait to talk to Peter with Chicago Sports Bums. And also, there's actually some space news. NASA.
Talking about the moon.
The moon is back in the news. I am very
back,
curious.
Baby.
She is back. Hey, Mike Kaplan actually kind of has fuzzy memories of the late 60s when the moon landing happens, he says. Well, I'm curious to know why I think it's awesome that there's going to be a manned moon mission again after all these years. I don't know if you've ever been to the MSI, Griffin MSI, where they've got they have one of the moon rovers in the space exhibit there at the Crown Space Center. It's so cool to see. And now they say there's like more technology packed into our smartphone than this huge like module that they have at the Griffin MSI. But we're going to be speaking with some folks over at the Adler to talk about how it's been 50 years since the iconic Apollo missions and how, hey, we are getting ready for another manned mission to the moon, and this is all gearing up for Mars.
Would you go to the moon?
Mike Kaplan phrased it perfectly this morning. I'm a feet on the ground kind of guy.
No, you're not.
Yes, I
you like
am.
To fly. Come on.
No, I will fly, but the heights, there's something about being in the plane. I'm not like looking down and thinking I'm scared of heights, but I've never been a heights guy at all. I remember I didn't know it until we climbed the Statue of Liberty when I was young. And I did not like
I bet.
going up the stairs. I was kind of shimmying down them, I remember. And that's when it hit. I'm not a heights guy.
I get it. I feel like humans shouldn't be heights
I'm a feet on the ground guy. Yes.
Yeah, I would not go to the moon either. Not go
No.
to the moon. I don't even like
Stay on
going
the
in
ground.
airplanes.
Would you do one of those commercial flights to like the edge of space, the edge of the
No.
atmosphere? No.
Absolutely
Yeah, I'm
not. Would you?
I'm not.
It reminds me of like those people that would be willing to go look for the Titanic under the ocean.
Ooh, that I would way rather go up than after
I wouldn't wanna do either.
after the submersible thing. But
Imagine the anxiety. I mean, Katy Perry went to the edge of our atmosphere,
yeah,
and she came back
That's
with
right.
smiles. So
that's right. With Bezos' wife,
Yeah.
right? That whole
Yeah.
crew, they came back.
taking selfies.
Oh boy.
If they can do it, we can do it, Anthony.
Okay, we are like gaining 13 seconds of daylight every day.
Let's
I think
go.
we're inching toward the right direction, but a lot of people, to the tune of 13 million Americans, are expected to suffer from seasonal affective disorder, including teenagers. So looping into the conversation right now, we are joined. Do we have James Greenblatt, Dr. Greenblatt on the line? Dr. Greenblatt, thank you very much for joining us early in January. How surprising is this that 13 million Americans experience some kind of seasonal depression this time of year to you?
Well, not surprising at all. And that number reflects those that have significant depression symptoms. It's even more striking that I think it's close to 1 in 5 of us notice mood changes in the season. So there's a big difference between those with a disorder, seasonal affective disorder, where they get depressed, versus the 1 in 5 that just notice mood changes in the winter.
So seasonal affective disorder. So this is clinical depression. This is darker and deeper than just being sick of winter, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a medical disorder. It's a form of depression that has, I think, pretty significant implications if it's not treated.
How do you know if you just have the winter blues, in the 1 in 5 category versus whether you are suffering from seasonal affective disorder?
Well, I think the 1 in 5, as you discussed earlier, you just notice a little difference, and you might be able to have something planned or exercise, and your mood kind of shifts. The seasonal affective disorder, there are symptoms that persist. So there's sadness, it affects sleep and appetite, and it probably impairs some aspect of your life, either work or family. And then it's best to get an evaluation and treatment.
So this is because of the weather being cold and cloudy. So do folks that live in, let's say, Florida, do they have this seasonal disorder as well?
Great question. They do, but not as much. Northern climates, much higher incidence. So it's not just the cold, it's probably more the light. So it's based on the light and the ability for the light to kind of regulate our mood. But I think one of the critical parts, what happens in the winter too, is vitamin D levels often plummet. And I believe those are individuals that are most at risk of developing the seasonal affective disorder that needs treatment.
I do take a vitamin D supplement every day, every night before bed. I have to ask you, with the light thing, do you know anything about this affective disorder in states like Alaska, where it can be night for weeks on end?
Oh, absolutely. The further north we go up, the less light, the higher incidence of this disorder. So the treatment actually involves light therapy. I mean, you can buy, light boxes or light eyeglasses that provide very intense light, and the treatment is usually 20 or 30 minutes in the morning. And for some individuals, it can completely reverse this condition.
Okay, so you are a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So let's talk about the kiddos. How do we know if our kids are suffering? What are the signs and symptoms?
I think children and adolescents are often not as simple as the adults because they don't express the sadness in the same way. I think the most important thing is to look at change in functioning, not doing hobbies or habits or games that they used to. Being irritable is more common in adolescent than being sad. And then the sleep and appetite changes. But I think the most important thing in dealing with children is asking. Many of as parents, we just kind of assume or avoid the question. But we need to ask our kids how they're doing.
What is a good strategy, a good on-ramp for that conversation? I know that adolescents can be standoffish in some cases, and you mentioned irritable. They're not wanting to talk to mom and dad about what's really bothering them. Can you give us a couple of tips?
Sure. I mean, I think a change from summer to the winter, and noticing it and then asking. Again, I'm going to bring up the vitamin D. I think everybody who's prone to depression, family history of depression, should have their vitamin D levels checked, because not simply taking a pill might not be enough. You might not know how much. So having parents proactively go to their doctors and get vitamin D levels checked, and just keeping that communication open to continue to ask the question, how are you doing?
So how do we know that it is, obviously you mentioned the difference between summer and winter, if the kids are starting to act different as the cold season moves in, the difference between that and depression, where they need to be on some sort of antidepressant?
You know, oftentimes that will take an evaluation from a professional.
Okay.
But I think the keys are family history of depression would be something I'd be more higher risk and concerned about, or past depression and other years. And, you know, behaviors, again, sleep, appetite, removing oneself from activities. But many of these kids, if you ask them, they'll tell you how they're feeling. And we can't be afraid to ask our children how their mood is.
Yeah, do you have any advice on conversation starters, or is it simply checking in and say, hey, I noticed weren't in the best mood today. How are you doing? Anything on your mind?
Well, if you ask the child a direct question, you're probably not going to get the answer you want. So it usually helps to perhaps, you know, whether it's the family meal that I've noticed, you know, the winter, I'm just not as energetic. I'm not as happy. How are you guys feeling? So kind of frame it that and normalize it. And then the most important is listening.
What about getting them out? So, you know, in the winter it's hard because it's cold, but let's say a day like today, we're in the 40s, we're gonna have some sunshine later. Would you encourage parents to get their kids outside, even if they may be a little bit resistant to that?
Oh, absolutely. Morning sunlight is better and cheaper than buying a light box. So we're going to get some light exposure will be helpful. You mentioned exercise. We know exercise does help depression. It's the best antidepressant we have, and particularly seasonal affective disorder. And just the lifestyle, like monitoring sleep and diet. Some of the seasonal changes we notice are kind of carbohydrate cravings, more of the ultra-processed foods. So just being aware of that is also important.
Got it. Dr. Greenblatt, can you put this in context with past years or past decades? Is this problem getting worse? I know, you know, we've been reporting so much as parents about the impact of things like social media, screen time, not being able to get off the screens and get outside like Caitlin just asked you about. Is it worse than it was, let's say 10, 20 years ago?
I think in mental health for our children, the simple answer is everything is worse. Absolutely. We're seeing more anxiety, more depression, more self-injury, and more suicide. It's tragic. So this seasonal change that we're talking about can be a trigger for some individuals who are struggling with depression, and then the winter time is where those symptoms become significant and need more aggressive treatment.
Doctor, have you seen, Anthony mentioned for him, when it gets cold, having like a goal or, sorry, not a goal, a vacation planned or something to look forward to, it helps him. Would you say if you're a parent and your kid is really going through a tough time with this seasonal disorder, going on a vacation might help?
Well, if it's a sunny, warm vacation, absolutely.
Okay.
But I do want to, again, make the distinction between kind of the mood changes that 20% of us might notice versus some of these kids that are dipping into a depression. And that's where we just don't want to look at a vacation as a treatment. We want to get an assessment and see if that individual needs to be treated for depression.
What does an assessment usually kind of look like?
You know, assessment is with a mental health professional, it could be a social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist, who are going to spend the time, hopefully an hour, to do a good history and be able to distinguish between what we're discussing, winter blues, or something that's more significant like a seasonal depression.
What would you say to those who are hesitant to get on an antidepressant because of what it could mean when they get off of it? Like, let's say your child, they may need antidepressants, but you're worried about them becoming dependent on them long term.
Great question, and I think it's a long answer. Medications can be helpful, doesn't need to be the first choice, particularly for the seasonal affective disorder. We know optimizing vitamin D levels and light therapy has been shown to work as well as medications. But if somebody is struggling with a major depressive disorder, we do have medications that work. And I believe my career has been helping people learn to taper off medicines when they're not needed. So there's a path to using medications without having those significant withdrawal symptoms. I think psychiatry has perhaps used medications too much to avoid some of the other treatment models, but it's a combination of therapy, medicines, and my world, understanding nutritional psychiatry, we can treat depression in adolescents.
Love that.
Let's talk about the, I suppose, stigma or lack thereof in 2026 now. Have you noticed over the years that it's more and more common for teenagers to not associate therapy with being a bad thing, but just part of their weekly routine? Or do some families still kind of, or teenagers still resist it, thinking, oh my gosh, this means there's something wrong with me and I don't want to do it?
No, I think it's been amazing to me over my 30-year career, teenagers and particularly young adults now, where therapy and treatment for mental health challenges have just been normalized. It's part of the conversation, and that's been very nice to hear. I think there are certainly parents that struggle with stigma, that child labeled depression, but it is dramatically changed, which has enabled more people to get help. The problem is more and more people are struggling, and outcomes continue to not be 100% with just medication. So we need additional tools than just medications to treat depression.
Yeah. If there's a parent out there who's watching and they're really worried about their kid, what message do you want to leave with them before we let you go?
Well, you know, the name of the book is Finally Hopeful, so there's absolutely paths to treating depression. For some, it's the medications. For others, it's therapy. And for others, it could be a nutritional deficiency that has to get looked at. So absolutely, depression in adolescence is treated. Don't be afraid to ask your child how they're doing and get them help.
All right, great message as we kind of kick off this here in Chicago, January and February.
Right now,
yeah, they are tough months around here. Dr. James Greenblatt, child and adolescent psychiatrist. Thank you so much for your time this morning, sir. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you.
All right. We are going to take a quick break, but we're going to welcome back a friend of the show, Kate.
Chicago Sports Pub.
Yes, right. Peter Fonseca. He is going to, we're going to preview. We're all getting kind of stoked for this Saturday game.
Antsy,
okay?
antsy,
We're getting antsy.
Yeah.
Soldier Field's just over the park right
and we're
here.
going to have the game
Am I right?
on Fox Chicago.
Exactly.
Saturday evening, nowhere else to be.
12:30, we got game day live.
All day long.
We got post-game coverage after the game itself. So stay with us. We're going to hype up Bears-Packers, break down this matchup when we come back after this.
10:21, something to look forward to. Speaking of, this Saturday, big game if you haven't heard. So the Bears are getting ready to take on the Packers again this Saturday, 7 p.m. at Soldier Field. But before you watch the game here on Fox 32, by the way, we wanted to get you all caught up on what's at stake. So we're getting a preview of the game with Peter Fonseca, with Chicago Sports Bombs. How's it going, Peter?
Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to talk to you guys. I'm excited to talk Bears like the rest of the city. We're excited for this week.
We are very excited for this week. Peter, how are you gearing up for this game? Are you going to watch it in the climate-controlled confines of your home? I love your setup always. The background is great.
Oh, yeah.
Or are you going to do the whole tailgating thing and be out there?
So typically the Chicago Sports Bums, we've been doing watch parties at the Ramova Theater at the Ramova, south side of Chicago, right on Halsted and 35th. We will be there starting at 6 p.m. Last time we had a watch party for the Packers game, we had that exciting ending. I'm excited to run it back with everybody because I mean, this is the most anticipated game in, like you mentioned earlier, probably more than a decade.
Let's go. All right, so the Bears lost to the Lions last weekend. What needs to change this upcoming weekend to keep them in the running for the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think if you ask most Bears fans, what we're expecting and what we're hoping for is that they just show up for 4 quarters. I know they have this history of being the cardiac Bears this year, where they have these epic comebacks late in the game. If they just show up for 4 quarters and do what they have to do on all sides of the ball, both defense and offense, I think they match up well with the Packers. And I know the Bears and the Packers have a huge history, and we're on the wrong side of that history. But I think with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, that's where things can change. But realistically, if they show up for 4 quarters and not just a quarter and a half, I think the Bears are in a good place.
Okay, let's go through injuries as well. It was frustrating for me during that Lions game to just all those cutaway shots of Rome Odunze on the sidelines. I know Colson Loveland had a great game. Where are we injury-wise, and what do you predict for Saturday in terms of this matchup?
Yeah, so it sounds like Rome Odunze, no injury designation going into this week. It sounds like he's going to play. That's going to be a big help for the offense. He was their leading receiver up until he got hurt. So Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson get another weapon on offense. And another person I'm looking for that didn't have an injury designation yesterday was Kyler Gordon. Because this defense, while it is a lot of bend, don't break, they really needed help in the secondary. I mean, they kind of need help all over the place, if we're being honest. But getting Kyler Gordon back and healthy, and hopefully I'm crossing my fingers he doesn't get hurt again because he has a history of re-aggravating injuries. If Kyler Gordon is back and Rome Odunze, both offense and defense gain some weapons, that's very good for the Chicago Bears.
What do you think they're focusing on specifically this week?
I think they have to get to the quarterback. You saw in the last game against the Packers, you know, Austin Booker was able to get to Jordan Love. He ended up getting hurt, leaving with a concussion. Now, obviously, as Bears fans, we don't root for injuries, but when this defense is good or at least decent is when they're getting sacks on the quarterback. They've had issues getting pressure to the quarterback. I think that's going to be the main focus on defense. And then on offense, it's just like we mentioned, showing up for 4 quarters and running the ball. They have a really good run offense, especially in the playoffs. You want to control the clock and kind of dominate time of possession. The Bears and their offensive line and their running backs are really good at that. They got to continue doing that if they want to have success in the playoffs.
Peter, I want to talk to you about this rivalry. All right, Bears-Packers, you know, it's talking about as perhaps the most storied rivalry in the NFL. I mean, these are 2 of the oldest, most historic franchises in the league. From my point of view, this actually hasn't been that much of a rivalry. Like, through most of my life, it's been so one-sided.
Yeah.
But
we got the cheese grater out.
We saw those cheese grater hats, but there appears to be a little bit of actual bad blood between these 2 teams who are more evenly matched finally.
Yeah, like you mentioned, for the better part of me being a Bears fan, the Packers unfortunately have had our number.
Yeah.
Right? Brett Favre Aaron Rodgers and the beginning part of the Jordan Love era. But Ben Johnson made it a point when he came to Chicago to say that he is focused on beating the Packers. And I think Ben Johnson in his introductory press conference kind of rubbed the Packers fans the wrong way. And Matt LaFleur had an interview that he talked about, like, I don't even know Ben Johnson. People thought maybe they were friendly and they had a friendly rivalry. I don't think there's anything friendly about Ben Johnson wanting to beat Matt LaFleur and vice versa. And that translates to the fans and the players. The players want to play for Ben Johnson. The fans, I mean, it doesn't matter who's on the field and who's coaching. We want to beat the Packers. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. But I think in this new era of Chicago Bears football, that's when things have happened. You guys are showing the highlights of that last game. That's where, hope is there. We have hope that this is a different type of Bears team, and the history with the Packers is in the past.
Okay, so Packers fans, they're not too far away. Being at Soldier Field, I'm sure their fans are going to show up and show out. Is it going to give us any advantage having a home game?
Yeah, I think especially in the playoffs, home field advantage is a big deal. So the Bears playing at home is an advantage. Obviously, Green Bay playing outside and the weather being fairly decent for January isn't going to be as big of an advantage as if we were playing a team from California or a team from the South. But I still think home field advantage. And the stadium, credit to Bears fans, the stadium has been rocking for the entire season. We've had a good amount of primetime games, and I know Tom Brady mentioned that, like, when the stadium is rocking, it's a different atmosphere. So that's what I'm hoping that Bears fans can bring on Saturday night. Just be loud, be disruptive, make it hard for the Packers offense to stay on that field.
If folks want to join you guys at the Ramova, is it one of those things that's open to the public, or is this an exclusive club with you, with you fellas?
Come one, come all. It's open to the public, free to get in with RSVP. You could go to RamovaChicago.com, RSVP for free. It's free entry. We'll have a full kitchen open. There's going to be some drink packages or drink specials available, but it's always a fun time. We do some giveaways. We do football squares. We raffle off some jerseys and merch. It's been a really fun time all season long. And that's kind of something we as Chicago sports fans and the Chicago sports bums, we were just waiting for somebody to be good. I always told people, I didn't care if it was the Blackhawks, the White Sox, the Bears. We were just hoping for somebody to be good, and we finally got it. This city is different when the Bears are good.
Oh, yeah.
You guys had Dr. James Greenblatt on, and I know, we all suffer from some sort of seasonal depression. I feel like the Bears are kind of helping out in this scenario.
I totally agree.
Guys,
especially in December and January.
Should we make bets? Is Coach going to take his shirt off if the Bears?
Oh, there you go.
I would say he is. I bet he is.
I think it was a one-time thing for Ben Johnson to de-shirt. It came at the perfect time. I don't think anyone is missing Matt Eberflus, who got fired, by the way, from his defensive coordinator position. Peter Fonseca, you are the man. Thank you for joining us today. Bring some good Bears spirit this weekend down at the Ramova, and we hope to check back in with you after a successful first round of the playoffs here.
Let's go.
You know what? Let's go. Bear down.
Bear down, baby. Bears win, guaranteed.
That's right.
What is it? Good, better, best? Good, better, best?
I think so.
Good, better, best.
Yeah. And as a reminder, you can watch Bears-Packers right here on Fox Chicago, Saturday, 7 p.m. And this is actually, you just stick with us all day. Saturday is the second half of an NFL doubleheader. Starts with Rams, Panthers, and then our coverage begins with Bears Game Day Live at 12:30. And then obviously we have full post-game coverage. We're going to hear from Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, all the players. Said it before, I'll say it again, hoping that post-game coverage, a lot of live shots from a celebratory locker room.
Oh, yeah. Don't leave the couch Saturday, Fox Chicago.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break, everybody, but we're going to talk space missions when we come back with our friends over at the Adler. Astronauts, 4 of them, are on the verge of another manned mission to the moon. We'll be right back.
Almost 10:34, and if you didn't know, 4 astronauts are on the verge of becoming the first humans to venture near the moon in more than 50 years, with NASA's iconic Apollo era when it came to an end. As early as February, the crew of mission known as Artemis II will board the U.S. Space Agency's Orion capsule atop NASA's Space Launch System rocket for a 10-day trip circumnavigating the moon. The 4 astronauts will venture on a cosmic journey that will lay the groundwork for future astronauts to step foot on the lunar surface in the years ahead. So, joining us this morning to give us more insight on what this means and why we're doing it is Michelle Nichols. She's the Director of Public Observing at the Adler Planetarium. Good morning to you, Michelle.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, so what is all this interest that NASA has in the moon?
So the moon has been interesting for all of human existence, but as you said, the last time we sent astronauts to the moon was over 50 years ago. So returning there has been scientifically interesting for sure, because we want to see what else is there. We want to explore more parts of the moon that haven't been explored previously with people. So there's a lot of scientific interest and other things we want to know about the moon, and one of the best ways to do that is to send people. So this is going to be a test mission called Artemis II.
Okay, so tell us about the specifics of this mission. Based on the graphics that we're looking at, it looks like they're just making a loop. They're going to circumnavigate that moon and cruise on back here to solid ground. What are they going to be doing when they circumnavigate the moon?
So the first mission was called Artemis I, and that was about 3-ish years ago, and that involves sending the Orion spacecraft without people on it up and around to the moon and back. And so that was to test all that out without people, so no danger to people. This will be the first mission with people. So we want to give this spacecraft a shakeout, and the best way to do that is with people. So it's going to launch and then get sent around the moon and back. And the reason for that is it'll be sent in a trajectory that it won't necessitate using any rocket engines or anything on the spacecraft to get it back safely. It's just going to go out, around, and back. And during the 10-day mission, they'll just put the spacecraft through its paces with people, make sure everything goes well, so that future Artemis missions can hopefully return people to the surface of the moon. So think of this as a test mission with people, because that's the best way to know if all this actually works well.
Okay, let's talk about those people, those 4 astronauts. What do we know about them?
So we've got 3 Americans and 1 Canadian. So the Canadian astronaut, it's going to be his first flight into space at all. So I keep thinking, oh my goodness, can you imagine your very first flight is going to take you around the moon and back? That's incredible. Christina Koch is one of the astronauts. She is one of the most experienced astronauts in the entire NASA Corps. She has been up in space on the International Space Station for a grand total of well over 360 days in total. Incredible amount of experience. And so we've got 2 other astronauts who combined have about the same level of experience as her. Actually, now I'm trying to remember if her experience is 350 or 325, somewhere around there. Lots of experience in space for these folks. So we've got a great crew on tap for sending them to the moon and back.
Why now? Okay, because you know, we've been talking about the Apollo missions. We've all seen the movie with Tom Hanks and everything. We did this 50 years ago. Why the sudden interest in getting close to the moon here in 2026?
So the interest is not actually all that sudden. So we've been creating the infrastructure and the rocket and the spacecraft and all of that even since before the space shuttle program ended in 2011. So this has been on tap for a really long time. Now, it seems like all this is happening all at once. This mission actually was supposed to happen back, I believe, in 2023. But there were some problems with the heat shield of the Orion spacecraft on that Artemis 1 mission, and they wanted to solve that before they put people on the spacecraft. So so that just takes a while. Space flight is expensive. It takes a long time to create stuff, test stuff, pay for stuff. And so it definitely seems like it's all happening all at once, but the groundwork has been laid for at least about 15, 20 years. Okay. So it takes a long time to do all this.
Is there any whispers of trying to make it habitable for humans to live on the moon?
Yeah, actually, so there's a whole infrastructure of Artemis missions that are supposed to follow on. Now, exactly when those will happen,
Sure.
2027, 2028, maybe longer. So sending people to the surface of the moon is the part that's going to take a really long time and a lot of effort. That creating a landing system that actually doesn't completely exist yet. So that of course needs to be worked on. So yeah, it's definitely something that has to get figured out first, but this is the next step in all.
All right, I want to dive into the why a little bit more here with you, Michelle, because in my mind, okay, we go back to the late 60s. What would be your message to folks who are like, okay, been there, done that, we've done this, we've already we've put men on the moon, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, right? So why do we need to do this again? And is this, in a larger context, all groundwork to possibly send men and women to Mars?
Well, you answered part of the question partially with your second statement, but yeah, this would be a test bed for eventually sending people to Mars. The moon is closer; it's easier to access. You can get there in a few days, as opposed to several months just to get to Mars, not only getting back. So that would be a really long time to be able to do that. And we've never done a space mission that long before. But the been there, done that part, I'll put it in terms of an analogy. Let's pretend you're trying to investigate the Earth. You know nothing about it, and you're told you can land at 6 spots on the Earth near the equator. And if you land there, you can only go maybe half a mile away from wherever you landed. And you need to learn everything about the Earth by landing in those 6 spots. You go, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Of course not. That's exactly why. We only landed in 6 spots near the equator on the near side of the moon. There's the entire far side of the moon. There's the polar regions. There's so much about the moon we have not explored directly. And so that I like to tell people is, the been there, done that is for those 6 spots on the moon, not the rest of it.
Makes sense.
The science is always worthwhile in my book.
Yeah. Okay. So we did this 50 years ago. With technology and how advanced it is, shouldn't this just be a walk in the park at this point?
You'd think, but the physics of it, sure. The technological aspect of it, you've got more technology in your phone, in your pocket, than the entire Apollo mission did on any one of those rockets. So technology has advanced, but it's been a long time. The moon wasn't a priority for literally decades. And so having all that inherent knowledge in NASA and that drive to do it, we didn't have that drive for a really long time, and rebuilding all of that infrastructure has to be done again, and can't rely on the technology from 50, 60 years ago. Got to put it in today's terms. And also exploring other parts of the moon would require advancements in technology and capability. So yeah, it seems like it's like, oh, we should just use all that stuff from before. Well, we really can't. So yeah, it takes more effort to be able to do it now. And it's more expensive now.
Yeah, I can imagine. Given the pace of how these missions, these Artemis missions are unfolding, what would you guess would be the time frame to put men and women on the moon, on the surface of the moon, here more in the short term before we even start thinking about Mars?
I personally, my personal view, my own view, not necessarily that of my employer, is my personal view. I'll be amazed if it happens before the end of this particular decade.
Okay.
If it happens sooner, awesome. But it takes a long time to do all this, and it's been so long since we did it. But you never know. Enough money, enough impetus. Who knows? It could happen, but we don't have all the stuff we need to be able to do it. The testing of all the systems and everything that we need to land and relaunch off the surface of the moon, that stuff hasn't happened yet. So there's a lot that needs to happen, and 4 years to the end of the decade is a really short time for spaceflight.
Okay, Michelle, let's talk about the Adler before we let you go. What do you guys have going on right now for folks that want to come visit?
Oh gosh, we have our Dark Side of the Moon Pink Floyd show has returned, so come back and see it. We're so excited to bring it back, and it's a great connection to the moon. So it's so fun. I love that show. So check our website for it. It plays every single day, and so come on and see it. We are returning that show. We got the spring break coming up, so be on tap for stuff coming up during spring break. Lots of fun activities. There's a lunar eclipse in August that we hope will do a public event for, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, lots of cool moon stuff going on.
Oh, I've always wanted to see that Dark Side show, the Pink Floyd. Gotta do it. It plays every day. Awesome. Michelle Nichols, thank you so much for your time this new year. Appreciate it. We'll see you at the Adler. Yeah, and it sounds like these 4 astronauts are going to see the dark side.
They're so brave, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are so brave.
I wonder what that view is going to be like on the dark side, because there won't be, I don't know, that's a Mike Kaplan question.
I know, right?
That would have been a Michelle question.
No.
Yeah, big spotlight down there. Because will they be able to see any, like, shadows or anything?
Lights on, yeah.
But I can't imagine the view of the little blue ball that we live on from out there.
Yeah, puts things into perspective a whole new way.
Indeed, indeed. All right, after the break, we're coming back down here on Earth with our very own Natalie Baumke, who is entering the studio as we speak to share more about her latest adventure at Brookfield Zoo, Chicago. We'll be right back with her.
I was driving down
are the original grumpy cats here at Brookfield Zoo, Chicago, and they are ready to celebrate the new year in their very own unique way. I'm here with Dr. Mike, the president and CEO of the zoo. These cats are so adorable. Where can we find them?
We've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Yes.
So we're here at the Desert's Edge at Brookfield Zoo. These cats come from Central Asia, so ranges from Iran all the way across through the Himalayas into China, and a variety of habitats, kind of grassland to rocky areas.
Well, I mean, are you likely to see them in the wild, or are they pretty evasive?
So they tend to be a little bit reclusive, and obviously incredibly good at blending into the habitat too. So you can just see the camouflage that they're able to employ against these rocks, and they're what we would call an ambush predator. So they're one that kind of stays hidden until they see something to jump out on top of and grab hold of their dinner. And their grumpy face is kind of to help that ability to ambush, so that they can kind of stay behind a rock, and their ears are flat, and they're able to kind of stay hidden.
How are they different from the cats that we might have at our house?
So completely non-domesticated. So there's a wide variety of smaller cat species around the globe that are, not really closely related to our domestic house cats in any way, but just a magnificent animal.
Tell me about the fur too. And I understand their fur kind of changes for the seasons or the climate that they're in.
Yeah, so it's got that seasonality to it to help with the camouflage function, and then also to help with just the warmth that it provides. So they're a cat that can really take it into pretty cold temperatures and have that nice warm coat to help them do so.
And I understand all cats are carnivores, right?
Yes,
and so is
correct.
that the case with these guys? What are they eating?
Yeah. So right now they've got some mice, and they've got just some chunks of meat. But yeah, in the wild, strict carnivore.
They have really short legs too, and their tails are kind of are fat, right?
So I would call it fluffy more than fat, but yeah, like a nice.
That is not PC. Okay.
Nice, thick, fluffy hair coat there on their tail. Yeah.
And so that helps them when it's really cold, right?
Yeah. So it's just something else they can wrap around them to help stay warm. It also provides some balance function. So when we see them kind of climbing around on the rocks like she's doing now, that tail helps as a little bit of a counterbalance.
And you've got a male and female here on Habitat at Brookfield Zoo, Chicago.
Yeah, so Johan and Ruby, and hopefully we'll have some baby palace cats in the future.
Ooh, I see a follow-up segment. And tell us where we are, or tell our viewers where we are.
Desert's Edge.
And there's another cat in here as well.
There is, so the sand cat.
Yes.
There are other cat species in here.
And then the meerkats, completely unrelated, but adorable, and will greet you as you walk in the door here. So come visit the Palace Cat here at Brookfield Zoo, Chicago.
Okay, Natalie, I gotta ask you to put this Palace Cat on the cute scale, 1 to 10. 1 being like a snake, you know what I mean, something you would never want to cuddle with, and 10 being like, a baby koala or a golden retriever puppy.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of animals in your day. Where does this rank on the cute scale?
I would say, well, the new Amber leopard cubs at Brookfield Zoo, Chicago, like top of the list.
So those are at 100.
And actually, when we were shooting this segment, their habitat is right outside of Desert's Edge, where this cat was. So we were able to see them playing with their mommy. They're so cute.
So you swung by to say hi.
That's right. But I'm so fascinated by cats that look so much like the house cats that we're used to, but live in the wild and that you could never keep in your home.
I feel like house cats should be wild.
They are kind of wild.
I don't really think that they should be.
When I was leaving the house today,
Caitlin, but you
Jonesy,
are a dog person.
Jonesy just attacked my leg.
That's what I'm saying.
And he gave me like a little bite, like feed me. You know what I mean? He's a wild, testosterone heavy cat.
But
okay?
You really like cats.
I love them.
Too.
And
you
so
were creeped out during that segment. Like Caitlin, you didn't see while it was rolling. Caitlin's like, that's creepy.
What? No.
You did say that.
Did I?
Yes.
I don't know.
I'm over here gushing like I just want to nuzzle that thing.
Snuggle that little
I just want to.
It would scratch your eyes out,
It
which
would scratch
many other animals would as well, but at the zoo. But what they did to get, so we could get them on camera, because they're elusive little creatures. It's, even when you visit the zoo, it's hard to catch them. Usually they're sleeping like in the crevices and hard to spot, but they put pieces of raw meat and dead mice.
Okay.
Kind of all over that area there, and so they were out and about. But they live in many different climates, which is amazing to me. And they were first discovered back in the 1700s. And so that's why the man who discovered them, his last name was Pallas. So that's why they are Pallas's cats.
And the desert, they're in the desert habitat?
You know, I picture them more in like a Russian kind of like a tundra kind of Siberia type of climate, but they can be found in many different places.
Okay.
Including your living room.
Where, okay, on the size spectrum are they? Because it's hard to get...
Size, I would say the size of a raccoon.
The size of a raccoon.
Yes.
So roughly the size of a house cat.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe a teeny tiny bit larger.
A little bit bigger?
Yes. But they have another cat in this same area called, I believe it's the sand cat. And it looks even more like a house cat. It has its own habitat, and it even has a litter box. So I'm like, what is going on here? It is so super cute, though.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Are you old enough to know a show called Thundercats by chance?
Yes.
Okay, there was a character on that show named Snarf. That thing looked like Snarf. I don't know if
you're talking about.
Yeah, old school, because you're
the fur down
yeah,
up.
Yeah, exactly. Fluffy Snarf. Yeah, I used to love that show. That is fascinating. I've got to take Jero over there to see the Palace cat. Do you have anything else coming up or in the pipeline for Brookfield at this point? I know we're just kicking off the...
I shot a few different stories when I was out there. Aside from that, though, what's coming up next Wednesday, their free days started this week, and they run through February. So double check, because if you're an Illinois resident, you can get into the zoo for free, which is, I know that winter break is over for most students, but still a great opportunity for the weekends. And even if it's cold outside, they have a lot of indoor habitats to check out.
Actually, we're gonna, when we come back, we're gonna take a quick break right now, but when we come back, we are going to run through an entire list of free days for not only Chicagoans, but anyone from Illinois for all these wonderful Chicago institutions when we come back. Oh, no break? No break. Well, let's run through them right now. Go for it, Caitlin.
All right, so the Adler Planetarium, we just spoke with the Adler, by the way. They've got their Dark Side of the Moon exhibit back. January 6th through the 8th, the 13th through the 20th, and the 27th through the 29th. You know, we should have this posted.
Do we have a, I don't know if we have.
These are a lot of dates here. February 3rd through the 5th, the 10th through the 12th, 17th through the 19th, and 24th through the 26th.
1, 2.
So that's just at the Adler.
Yeah.
That's just at the Adler, the free days.
Yeah.
I wonder if the Pink Floyd thing is free.
You know what, you guys? I will take a picture of this, and I'll put it on my Instagram, kate.cody. So you could...
I heard we have graphics.
Yeah, so people can take a picture of it, because these are a lot of dates to remember. Okay, the Art Institute of Chicago. Chicagoans can get in for free, 11 to 5, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Oh, yeah, there it is on the screen. 11 to 8, Thursdays. What is it?
Oh, it's the History Museum. Sorry, you're reading the Art Institute.
Oh, yeah.
The History Museum's up there.
Okay, yeah, no, yeah. Let's just talk about what you can see. The History Museum, there you go. Okay, so what's next? The Field Museum, free every Wednesday.
That's easy to remember. Through March. This is so nice that they do this during the winter months, right?
Goodness.
And let's see, the Field, free every Wednesday through March 25th.
Okay, what's next?
MCA.
Museum of Contemporary Art.
And this is for all Illinois residents. You don't just have to be a Chicagoan with a Chicago license.
Yep.
Tuesday's your night, okay? Little date night with a significant other. Check out some modern art and maybe hit happy hour. What do you think, guys?
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little culture.
What's next? Griffin MSI. Okay, so this is free admission for Illinois as well, Illinois residents, with valid proof on select dates, January through June, including January 12th through the 14th, January 25th through the 28th.
And on the space note, we've been talking a lot about space, the Henry Crown Space Center, you can see one of the original Apollo moon landing like modules. It's this little like rhombus, and
can you imagine? I can't.
So wild. And you can actually look into the thing. And Michelle with the Adler was pointing out how the technology, there's more technology in this thing than there is in that whole thing. You look in there and it's like dials and knobs and you know, and switches. It definitely looks 1960s.
That we had been using with the Russians. I mean, up until just a couple years ago. You know, we were sending our astronauts, and that thing has been around forever. It's just like a metal, it's like a tin can.
Tin can up there.
Wild. All right, did we get them all?
We got some more.
Nature Museum.
Yay!
Yeah, free admission for Illinois residents every Thursday.
You got to check. One of the great things about the Notabart, you can check out the butterfly exhibit. It goes all winter. You know, it's like a nice like butterfly sanctuary. And also, this is for those of you that are less squeamish. You can see, I took Jero there 2 weeks ago, and there was a taxidermist working on a bird. And it was a little, you know, like
woodpecker.
Vivid. It was a woodpecker that had exactly a little graphic, but she was very knowledgeable, and you know, this was a woodpecker that had struck one of the windows, but they were going to put it on display. So anyway, a lot of interesting stuff to see at Peggy Notabart too.
All right, I think we got to wrap it up. Unfortunately, this was a really fun show. Natalie,
thank you. Thanks for joining us, Nat.
I love spending more time with you
see that Palace cat.
Okay.
Very cute.
Oh, and there's the shed for you aquarium lovers. Plenty of dates. Those are the free museum dates, and a number of them in both January and February. We got another hour of Chicago Now after this short break, so stay with us, everybody. I hope you are having a great Wednesday.
Fox 32 Chicago.
Welcome to the 11 o'clock hour of Chicago Now. It is good to have you back, Madame. How was your new year?
Listen, I almost kissed that ground when I got back.
Yeah?
I was so happy to be back, considering everything that was going on in the world. My new year was great. I got to spend it with my husband, my daughter. I can't complain about that. It was absolutely wonderful. We thought we were going to go out and party, but we didn't. We didn't go out and party.
Why were you kissing the ground?
Okay, so.
Just so you know, I'm hearing this for the first time with you, because Tia and I never have time before the show to actually like chat.
So I ended up in Colombia, and if anybody knows anything about the geography of that region, it's right next door to Venezuela. And all of this stuff was going on with President Trump here, and then their president there. It was all happening while I was there. So every time the president there, Gustavo, would get on TV and say, "Come find me," I'm like, "No, not yet. Okay, can I get out of your country first? Because I don't want anything to happen while I'm here, because you don't know if you'll be able to get home." So I enjoyed the trip, but not really, because of
there was that underlying, like, okay, what's going to happen? I'm surprised that, you know, it was as easy for you to get back, I guess, as it was. Or did you have trouble?
I was surprised too.
Yeah.
No, I had no trouble, but I was, the whole time I was like, everything that happened during the course of going home, I was like, okay. So for example, when we were in the airport leaving Colombia, there was a police officer that said, "Where are you going?" And he said it so aggressively, and I'm thinking, don't let this be the moment. Please don't tell me I can't leave here. Yeah, and every time I was, it felt like, and I was on edge, of course, but every time I had an interaction, I thought, this is it. They're going to tell me I can't get out of here.
Yeah, like what is this person going to say to me?
Yeah,
oh
so
my gosh,
listen.
because we're hearing stories about like people in like St. Bart's, other places like obviously Cuba,
Jamaica, people that were stuck. And then, so we had to fly to Panama City to leave, and apparently they had shut down some of that airspace too. So listen, what did I learn from this? I think it's one of those things where I didn't know where I was going. You know, I boarded this plane under a different notion of where I was going based on what my husband said. So in my mind, I thought Panama City, Florida.
Okay, that would make sense.
I didn't think Panama City, like going to Panama. And so, the passport thing didn't, I don't have, what is it, the real ID? So the passport thing didn't alarm me or anything. So, listen, I'm happy to be here.
Tia.
That plane ride was something else. Talking to people from Venezuela that had fled Venezuela to go to Colombia gave me a different perspective. I did interview some people while I was there. It gave me a different perspective on everything that's unfolding. They have their opinion of Maduro. They now have their opinion too of Trump. So, and I know we're going to talk to an expert all about this and everything that's unfolding. An expert that was with the FBI. So that person will be able to explain it more. But talking to the people there gives you a completely different light on everything that has transpired here in the USA.
Yeah, I will say that there's a lot of different views here. We had someone on yesterday who too was able to kind of give us that insight. Overall, all things aside, actual vacation in Colombia, how was it?
It did not feel like a vacation because everything if somebody opened their hotel door, the resort door next door too hard, I thought this is it. I mean, you're on edge the
so
whole
you were
time.
just like, you were on edge the entire time. There was no relaxing, getting it out of your head.
No.
Okay.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful place.
Bad.
It's a beautiful place.
Really try. He's like, you know what? I'm going to take my beautiful wife on this little vacation to Colombia.
We had a good time, but it was definitely like, watching was good because even their news cycle is different from ours. So like you really can only watch CNN. So like it was interesting. I learned a lot in that trip.
Okay,
appreciate being in your home country for sure, because then you know where things are. Like for example, we know if we need to get in contact with a government official, how to do it here. There, the U.S. Embassy for Colombia is in Bogota, which is about a distance away in a car. We're talking at least 8 hours plus. Sometimes more because of rugged terrain. So there's a lot.
And that's a good point if you're going anywhere. Maybe if you're traveling for the first time. That's one thing I've learned going to Central America many times to see my family is always know, and this is even my family saying this, always know where the U.S. Embassy is, always know your plan of action because you never know what's going to happen.
You never know. And so all of those things I had to research on the fly in case things went left. Okay,
well,
that was
you know what? You're here, Tia, and we're going to have a great hour of Chicago Now.
Thank God. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about what is coming up in our show. So every January, the New York Times and I know a lot of people don't know about this, they kind of like measure wellness and talk about things involving wellness. They pose a challenge for readers to start their year off right, and this year's challenge is focused on brain health. So we're going to break that down. And then the Chicago Tribune looked at the fiscal costs of Operation Midway Blitz. We've heard about how much we think things cost, but now we're actually finding out some really hard numbers that we can hold on to actually see on paper how much did this cost. But first we got to talk about Mickey Rourke declines $100,000 in donations after his eviction. I'm actually surprised by this. I don't know if this is ego or what's happened here and why not accept it, but he was evicted from his Los Angeles home after owing nearly $60,000 in overdue rent. The people galvanized, they came together, and they were able to raise more than $100,000 online. He's 73 years old, and he said in an Instagram video that the situation was humiliating and that he would never ask fans or strangers for money. And I understand that. Maybe you didn't necessarily ask, but you're in this position now where you need help. I have a lot of questions about this. My number one question I wanted to know was how much was it per month? And then I read it to be, right there, $5,200 to $7,000. And I don't know.
But isn't he claiming that this wasn't him who posted this GoFundMe?
That is what he's claiming.
That it's one of his fans or somebody who like kind of posed as him, asking for some money. Have you seen some recent pictures of him? Like, look at that. Like, even that clip.
Yeah.
What show is this from? Big Brother?
Big Brother, Celebrity Big Brother.
Celebrity Big Brother.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be commenting on people's appearance, but
This is what I will say.
Quite interesting. I haven't seen him in a while.
That rent amount, I know he lives in LA, rent is expensive, but if you can't afford that, maybe it's time to look somewhere else.
Yeah, there are other places.
Yeah, or go somewhere else, because that is a lot in rent. $5,200 to $7,000 a month is a lot. But it is LA, I understand that.
Well, and it increased from $5,200 to $7,000.
Yeah.
Both those amounts are a lot.
It's a lot.
Okay, speaking of moving, apparently there's a new trend that Americans are moving to Oregon more than any other state, studies show.
And maybe he should go there.
Maybe he should go to Oregon.
Just saying.
I don't know. And I'm going to tell you here that a lot of people are leaving California and going to states that are nearby.
Places like that. Yeah.
And this is according to United Van Line's 49th Annual National Mover Study. So the study shows continued movement from colder northern and Midwestern states to warmer southern and western states. That makes sense. Like, I'm thinking Florida, Texas, a lot of people are moving to, obviously. So Oregon ranked as a top inbound state this year, with 65% of movers coming into the state and 35% moving out. So those are pretty good.
They're pretty good numbers.
Yeah.
And it's not on our cards, but I did look it up on Zillow.com because I was just curious in terms of affordability, because I knew we would talk about Mickey Rourke. In terms of rent rates right now there, the average rent around $1,749, so not too bad. The average home price is down 1.5% to around $519, which is widely affordable, right, for a lot of people, because we have seen where those amounts of being able to own a home is becoming more distant of becoming the American dream. So, I mean, looking at those numbers alone isn't bad.
And it also says that it became a popular destination for job-seeking migrants. About 36% of people relocated to Oregon for opportunities growing in tech and healthcare fields, which I guess Oregon isn't really the first place that you would think about, especially with tax, since it's so close to Northern California.
That's true.
Maybe they're moving their wings.
But it's probably cheaper to start a business in that there versus
100%.
California. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. All right. And then it says states surrounding California show high inbound migration, while California ranks as still one of the top outbound states. I want to go down to Illinois stats. Inbound, 45.7% of people. Outbound, 54%.
So we're replacing those people to some degree.
Essentially. And then it's kind of the reverse for Indiana here, because it says Indiana stats, inbound 57%, outbound 43%.
Yeah.
Still, New Jersey holds the highest percentage of residents moving out for the 8th straight year, with 62% of moves outbound.
You know, what I look at, I think really what this shows too, which we didn't really get into, is affordability factor. Things are so expensive now.
Yeah.
And so it kind of makes sense. New Jersey is expensive. New York is expensive, looking at proximity. So I guess that makes sense.
Anywhere is expensive.
Let me ask you a question. If you could live anywhere else outside of this state, this city, where would you live?
Where would I live? That's a good question. You know what? I should reflect on this a little bit more. I would say, see, and I'm always back and forth with this. I would say Southern California, just because my family's there, right? Mostly in San Diego and Los Angeles. But I also always like kind of crap on those two because I'm like, oh, people are just so superficial, so expensive there. Like, I just love Chicago so much. I would never move to New York City. I don't think I'd ever move to Florida. I don't know, Tia.
It's not one place you could think of?
Not really.
Wow. I'm surprised by that. I would think you would at least have one place that
Not really. I mean, like, yeah, I could throw out ideas, but I guess my answer would be Southern California, even though, like, I'm always on it.
Yeah, I've thought about this. You know, I'd be honest, I would either go to another country completely. I would consider that option, maybe Ghana or someplace like that. And I'm talking retirement age, right? Or I would look at like Tennessee. I'm kind of like a country girl.
Yeah,
we talked about this before.
Yeah, you told me that you loved, where were you?
I was in Tennessee, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't want to live there because it's too much touristy, but like Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia Beach. I'm one of those people where, listen, I don't mind other people's business and I don't want anybody else in mine. So I just want to be left alone in peace. That's how I want to live my life.
And
you know,
like
I mind my business, mind yours, let me live in peace.
You know what, and I've told you this before, that surprises me because you just seem like such a city girl. Like, you're always, well, you're in public eye, so you're always talking to public. So I would just assume that, like, that's you, you know?
No, I'm really like, I'm a forced extrovert, but really an introvert.
Okay.
You know, our environment forces us to be.
Yeah, you know what? I could say that about myself sometimes too. Yeah. And I think that's a Leo thing.
Yeah.
We're talking about horoscopes. I don't know much, honestly, about our own horoscope, but that's kind of what it says.
And we don't play. Don't play
also,
with us.
I guess if I were thinking about, like, outside of the U.S., it would probably be Costa Rica. But that would be easy.
Beautiful place.
Costa Rica is so beautiful. It's next to my family. Like, yeah.
Easy.
Makes sense.
Okay,
All right,
Costa Rica, that's my
you.
answer.
I'll come visit you. Okay, let's talk about this. I think this is really interesting because I always hear people say people don't read. They're always on social media. They're not reading books. I don't know. This is changing my mind about that because I thought the same thing. Barnes & Noble, they're opening 4 more stores in Chicago area. Some people are happy, some people are not. They will open their largest location in Chicago in the Loop this summer. I'm excited about this. I love Barnes & Noble, by the way. The store will be 30,000 square feet, located at 150 North State Street, and it will take over a space that was previously occupied by Old Navy. So right there on the corner.
Yeah, I know exactly
what is that, State and Randolph right there at that corner?
I think so, yeah. What is it?
So it'll be there, and the new location is also part of the college bookstore of DePaul University's Loop campus. What do you make of this? I'm trying to understand why people aren't as excited about this.
You know, I was kind of laughing when you say some are happy, some are not. Isn't that with like literally everything we talk about?
That's true.
Oh my gosh.
So here's what they're saying. What are they saying?
Well, they're saying that, you know, obviously that this is going to impact independent bookstores that are around the city. Volumes Book Cafe in Wicker Park is closing after nearly 10 years. You know, people put their heart and soul, these book lovers, these bookworms, into curating the perfect, you know, array of books for them to showcase in those neighborhoods. So obviously they saw a drop in sales, but then we're putting more, you know, Barnes & Nobles around. Like, you know, what's up with that? You would argue, okay, why aren't you supporting the local bookstores rather than, you know, going to Barnes & Noble?
I get that, but I don't think that has anything to do with, listen, I'm one of those people, and you know, sometimes people have accused me of, you know, paying or getting things for free. That's not the case. I support local business. That's what I believe in. So anything you ever see me post about a local business, I support it and pay for that local business. I support local business, but what I think is happening here is we are living in a downtown environment where it's an attraction, right? It's touristy. So of course, that's why that largest Starbucks is down the street. That doesn't mean that you don't support Sip and Savor, for example. That's a local coffee shop. You still support them, but the average person coming to Chicago is not necessarily looking for Sip and Savor. Maybe eventually it will get to that point where you create like a destination place where people want to come, take pictures, whatever. But the average person coming to Chicago, if they're into coffee, where are they heading? To the Starbucks Reserve. So I don't think it's a diss on small business. I think it's one of those things where I don't think the city is like forcing small businesses out in this particular case for the bookstores. I think it's just creating a tourist destination, and I think that's what it's about. I don't think it's about dismissing small businesses. I think we still support small businesses. I do. I think everybody should, but I think this is just a grand scheme of things. Looking at downtown Chicago, go up and down State Street. There's so many vacancies. There's vacancies on Michigan Avenue that have never been. When I grew up here, you never saw a sign in any window that said for rent.
Always booked.
On Michigan Avenue. So yeah, I think that's what's happening here. I don't think it's anything, you know, nefarious against small businesses. I think it's creating a tourist destination, an attraction of sorts. And this will be a large building.
And now if we'd see this maybe going up in that
next
spot in Wicker Park, next door down the street, that'd be a different conversation. But you're right. If people are going to Michigan Avenue and to the Mag Mile, then they have to understand that that's the experience that they're going for. And then if they go to Wicker Park, of course, they're going to find these locally owned businesses. And you should kind of, you know, base your trip on what you want, what kind of experience you want to have.
They do say the owner cited a drop in sales since Barnes & Noble opened nearby last year. I think one thing that small businesses have to start doing, and you know, I'm not a business expert, but this is just thinking outside the box, is literally that's what you have to do. You have to, yes, you may be a bookstore, but maybe on Friday night, it's books and jazz, or it's books and open poetry, something like that to attract people. And I think then you won't have to compete with the Barnes & Noble because they're not doing that. They're not bringing that local, you know, hometown feel in. So I think that's sadly what has to happen here. Now, I am sorry to see that, though. That's awful that they've had a drop in sales.
Yeah, I guess, that was kind of
but it
further down.
Yeah, it forces you to have to, as a small business, to kind of pivot, you know, what your business structure is a little bit.
You know, my mom's a hairstylist. I think I told you she owned a salon for years. And when business was slow at first, she put in like in an adjacent kind of area in the salon. She closed it off and made a coffee shop. Okay, well, that's how you have to pivot. She's always like resilient and switching and pivoting and making sure that she's on social media. You know, I think when I was like a teenager, I kind of make fun of her, like, Mom, what are you posting? Now I understand. Look, she was getting with the times. She knew that social media was getting more and more, and she had to build clientele. So she was going on, you know, going on Facebook, doing her Facebook Lives and stuff like that. So shout out to you, Mom. You did a good job, and I hope you're inspiring other business owners too.
Yeah, it's tough though. I understand what you're saying. You know, competing with a a big brand like Barnes & Noble, they have the financial backing. Even if times are rough at a Barnes & Noble, they don't necessarily have to close, right?
Yeah.
Because they have the financial backing to keep paying the rent or whatever it is. So I get that. But yeah, I think we're living in times where everyone has to pivot in some ways. Even our industry, right? We're on social media more. That's a pivot.
Big time.
You know, that's a huge pivot for us. So even this show, you know, talking off the cuff, not following a script is a pivot for us. So I think we're living in an environment where everybody's pivoting. I mean, that's just where we are.
I would have to agree. Although, isn't there a feeling though when you do go into a Barnes & Noble, there's just like this like nostalgic feeling. Like, I don't know if it's definitely the smell of just the books there and stuff like that, but sitting up there in the Starbucks, because there's a little, you know, there's always seems to be a Starbucks in there, so you smell the coffee.
Kids can play. That's why I'm going there with my daughter. The location in Oakbrook. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But I do think maybe that's a story that we tell. We talk to some of these small bookstore owners to see really what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a story that we should follow. I think it is moving forward. Okay, coming up, we're going to talk about brain health. It is 2026. Maybe it's time for counseling, some therapy or something like that you haven't considered. Be your best self. We're going to talk a little bit more about this with the New York Times. They're talking about all of the challenges that readers are facing already, starting off with 2026. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Proceed, counsel.
Welcome back to Chicago Now. Okay, every January, New York Times poses a challenge for readers to start the year off right. This year's challenge is focused on brain health and keeping your mind sharp, not just in 2026, but kind of every year. And, you know, especially starting in January, making sure that you're starting the year off right. Joining us is Dana Smith, New York Times personal health reporter and lead writer of this challenge. I also want to mention, Dana, you cover personal health with a focus on aging and brain health too. What an interesting beat. You're probably all over the place, but let's talk about this reading challenge. What is it called? What's the purpose of it?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is the January Brain Health Challenge. So we have 5 days of articles and activities that we're encouraging readers to do to try and think about improving their brain health. I think a lot of us think about our physical health, our bodies, especially, you know, around New Year's resolution time. And so we really want to encourage people to think about their cognitive health and their brain health as well.
Walk us through some of the challenges that you're giving out there to the readers for them to improve their brain health in 5 days.
Sure. So the first day, we love to start every challenge with a quiz. I think all of us like to test our knowledge. And so this was a fun quiz about the brain itself and some of the cool things that your brain does, and then also ways to take care of it. And then day 2 yesterday was all about nutrition. I think one thing that you'll see is that a lot of the behaviors that are good for your body are also good for your brain. They might not be all that surprising, but they're really important. And so yesterday we focused on nutrition, particularly the MIND diet, which is very similar to the Mediterranean diet, but has an extra emphasis on eating leafy greens and berries and nuts, because we know that those foods contain a lot of micronutrients that are really important for brain health. Today is exercise, and we're encouraging people to do a workout, whether it's go for a walk, or we've got a really fun kind of interactive questionnaire that will then give you a New York Times workout that we've developed. I have to say that when speaking with neurologists and neuroscientists about this challenge, exercise was the most important thing that they hit. Every single person talked about how good exercise is for your brain. So we really want to encourage people to get a little bit of physical activity. Tomorrow we're focusing on mental stimulation, so kind of doing a mental challenge. That might be what people think about kind of classically when you think about brain health, is kind of stimulating your brain, playing a brain teaser. So we're tapping into our New York Times games to give people a little bit of a cognitive challenge. And then the final day, Friday, is maybe the, not the sexiest answer, but it's all about blood pressure and taking care of your body. Experts I spoke with really emphasize how important blood pressure is for brain health. I think that might be one that most people weren't aware of. I didn't know that when I started reporting this. So we want people to go get their blood pressure checked. And then if it is higher than it should be, maybe go talk to your doctor about it.
Yeah, I really like this last one because you always kind of push those appointments to the wayside, especially if you're feeling healthy day to day. You're not really thinking about it. It's a hassle to make those appointments sometimes. Sure. This is happening at the beginning of the year. Do you guys do kind of like maybe a mid-year check-in, or what's your message to folks once this 5 days is over? Do you want them to go back and kind of revisit this throughout the year?
I'm so glad you asked that. We have not done check-ins for past challenges, and we're really thinking about doing one for this one. Because, well, it's really fun to play along and to do these activities once. The really important thing when it comes to brain health is doing them for the long term. So we're hoping that people might be able to turn these into long-lasting habits. That is a lot easier said than done, but we're trying to include some tips about how to make things kind of incorporate better into your day-to-day life. So I spoke with habit researchers in the reporting for this challenge as well, and they really emphasize making things as easy and frictionless as possible. So our tips for diet are just add a handful of berries to whatever you already eat in the morning for breakfast. We want these to be really small, attainable goals that people can continue doing. And we would love to check in with readers in 6 months and see, what are you still doing? What one or two changes did you take away with you, with the challenge to continue doing throughout the year?
Yeah. Dana, I'm sure you had to do research to pull this all together and get this posted and up online. Was there anything for you personally that you found surprising during this period?
I think the one that really stuck with me is just how good exercise is for your brain. I've always been active. I like to work out, but I think the science behind this is really, really fascinating. I think, we all know that we should be exercising maybe more than we do. But what was really cool to me was just why exercise is good for the brain specifically. If you'll bear with me for a second, I want to get a little bit nerdy. This is just kind of my favorite thing to talk about.
It's all right, go ahead.
When you exercise and move your muscles and get physical activity, there are these special signaling molecules that are released into your bloodstream called exerkines. I told you, I'm getting a little nerdy, but bear with me.
It's fine.
So basically, your muscles, when you move them, are shooting out these exerkines into your bloodstream, and they make their way up to your brain, and they actually help you build new connections between neurons, and they help repair damaged neurons. I mean, it's this amazing, crazy thing where some molecules that your muscles create actually really improve the kind of structure and health of your brain. So things like that, I think, are, maybe a little surprising. It certainly was to me, and hopefully are for readers, to emphasize why something, we know we should exercise, but hopefully now this will really drive home why it's good for your brain specifically.
That's interesting, because I've heard that with fasting before, that it can help kind of like renew those cells and stuff. So it's interesting to hear with the exercise. Thank you for mentioning that. There is something that I read, that the inspiration for this challenge, and correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you can talk about this, while the number of dementia cases is rising, the rate of dementia is actually falling. So neurologists that you've spoken with covering brain health stress that there's a lot of people that can take care of their brains and reduce their risk. Is that true? What have you found?
It is, yeah. I really love this fact. And this is something that neurologists I spoke with really wanted to get across. I think that we can be a little fatalistic about our brains. You know, I have dementia on both sides of my family. I know a lot of other people who do. It's a really scary prospect, and it feels like maybe something that's out of your control. And something a lot of the experts I spoke with emphasized was that there's a lot that you can do for your brain health. And that statistic that you mentioned is one of them. So while the number of people with dementia is rising just because we have an aging population, the percentage of people who have the condition is actually dropping. So fewer people, a smaller percentage of people are getting dementia these days than did in past generations. And that's because we're actually healthier in a lot of ways than we used to be. A big one is that fewer people smoke. We're also better at taking care of our cardiovascular health. I mentioned blood pressure as being really important. There's more that we can do to address blood pressure. And so I think this is something that not a lot of people maybe are aware of, is that you can take care of your brain health and improve your brain health just like you can your physical health. And so that was really the kind of overarching inspiration for the challenge, was to reassure people that there's a lot that you can do to take care of your mind and your brain going forward. And yeah, you can actually, improve your cognition and slow cognitive decline. There have been big clinical trials that have shown that in the last couple of years. So I think it's an exciting time and hopefully a hopeful time about brain health.
You know, Dana, one thing I think of is when people move into a new year, they're like, I got to do this, I got to do this. Yeah. They have like this laundry list of things that they want to knock off to be better this year than they were in past years. Did you find out anything in terms of how important sleep is for brain health?
I'm so glad you brought that up. Sleep was another one that a lot of experts really emphasize as being critically important for your health. I think it's one that a lot of people maybe disregard a little bit. We want to get a lot of things done. We have young kids, we have busy lives, we can sleep when we're dead, that whole idea. And honestly, sleep is one of the best things that you can do for your brain. Again, I can get nerdy with the science if you want.
Please, go ahead. Please do. I like it. And you're not. Okay, you're awesome. Doing it really well. You're explaining it well.
Really cool system called the glymphatic system, which is basically your brain's self-cleaning mechanism. And that really only kicks into high gear when you sleep. And so all of these damaged neurons and other junk that's kind of built up in your brain during the day, it gets flushed out when you sleep. So that is one reason that sleep is just so critical for brain health. I think we all feel better when we have a good night's rest after, than if we are sleep deprived. But long term, this kind of amazing self-cleaning aspect that the brain has is so important for brain health long term. And so again, hopefully people will think to prioritize their sleep a little bit more in the new year. I think that it can be easier said than done, but hopefully people will at least prioritize it or think about it a little bit more.
I need to. I know that. Dana, has this challenge changed throughout the years? Because it sounds like you guys have done it a couple of times. Am I correct? And maybe what was on this list last year compared to this year, and then maybe will you think about changing it for the year to come as well, 2026 or 2027?
Yeah, we've done this several times now. One of our amazing reporters, Jancy Dunn, has done it in past years. So she passed the baton to me this year. Last year it was focused on ultra-processed foods and basically how to recognize them, how to go around a grocery store and maybe identify what's an ultra-processed food versus a less processed food, how to maybe start to wean them out of your diet a little bit. So that was the focus for last year. One thing that we did this year that was a little bit different was we really encouraged people to sign up with a buddy or a partner. And again, there's some science behind that. One is just that it's a lot easier to stick with a habit if you have an accountability buddy. So we're really hoping that people did this with a friend or a family member or a neighbor or a coworker. And every day you can check in and say, hey, did you do your workout this morning? How did you change your diet yesterday? What new thing did you learn? Just to have someone to kind of do it with you and keep you accountable. Another aspect is that sneakily, our social connections are also really important for our brain health. So just talking to a friend every day can be really beneficial in the long term. Our relationships really matter. I think we all know that kind of, on a general level, but it matters for your brain health as well.
I can't imagine working from home and not getting the social interaction that I get every single day doing this job. And maybe you feel the same way doing interviews and such like that. Is there, something else that you guys are working on with New York Times Well, maybe that people at home could be looking forward to?
Oh, wow. January is really, we call it our Super Bowl. It is the month for wellness and for health. So we have a lot of amazing content that's going up about how to sleep better, how to eat better, a lot of exercise content. So I would really encourage people to check out the articles that we have on the Well Desk. And if they want to join the challenge, it's not too late. You can just go to nytimes.com/well challenge. We've got 2 more days coming up. And I think they're really fun, and I hope people have a good time taking part in them.
Dana, you said, I know you have 2 more days coming up. Is this a situation where people can go all the way back to the beginning, even if they start right now?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you can always, again, it's fun to do them once. It's fun to do them on the day when everyone else is doing them. But really, these are behaviors and habits that we hope people take with them forever, long term. So, we had a little what we called a menu of tweaks that you can make for the Mind diet. And honestly, we hope that you do them every day, whether it's, having fish for dinner one night or adding in spinach to your eggs in the morning. They're just kind of little tweaks that you can make to your diet, and you did not have to just do them yesterday. We hope that you do them every day. Same thing with workouts. We have a fun kind of workout generator that people can come back and do over and over again, and we'll give you a new workout every time. So we really hope that people engage with this content, not just this week, but going forward in the long term.
Very nice.
I like it.
I like it a lot.
Thank you, Dana.
Dana, thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you letting me nerd out a little bit. It's my favorite thing to talk about.
Honestly, it was perfect because you put it in layman's terms, you made it interesting, you made it pretty brief even. So I look forward to reading your stuff too. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Happy New Year. Okay, coming up, we are talking all things FBI. We've been following everything that's been happening in Venezuela with Maduro now in a New York jail there. We're going to talk to a former FBI counterterrorism and counterintelligence operative right after this break. Stay with us.
Good Day Chicago won't waste.
Welcome back to Chicago Now. We've talked about Operation Midway Blitz, who's been arrested, if they actually had, serious criminal histories or not, if that was true. And another thing that's come up with all of this is the cost. How much is this actually costing? And we do have a source that has been doing their digging. Welcome, Daniel Vach, a Chicago Tribune reporter. Thank you so much for your time, Daniel.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
This is one of those situations, Daniel, where, it wasn't obvious, right? The information wasn't just put out there to the public, so you had to do some digging. How much money did you find out was wrapped up in Operation Midway Blitz?
Well, what we have is probably a low estimate, but we found a pretty good estimate to start with is $59 million for all the parts of the operation we were able to pinpoint specific expenses for.
Can you go through some of those, with different kind of categories they're spending this money on? Was there one category where they, obviously kind of spent the most on?
Yeah, it's interesting because some of the more visible things were not the most expensive ones. What we found the most expensive part was actually detaining people. So once they're put off the street and then they're taken to federal ICE facilities, often in Indiana or Michigan like that, that can cost like $150 a night. And if you multiply that by the number of people that have been taken, which is about 4,500, last count we got from DHS, that's a big expense. Another big expense that you don't see was the National Guard. The National Guard was deployed by the president, from both the Texas and Illinois Guard, but because of court orders, they weren't actually able to go anywhere or do much in the actual enforcement bit. But that was also, I forget exactly the amount, but tens of millions of dollars. So those are the biggest two. And then from there, you've got overtime, lodging, per diems, and everything from helicopters down to even tear gas.
I want to go back to something that you said, Daniel. You said once people were taken into ICE custody, roughly $150 a night. Was that for food costs? Was that for the guards that were watching them? What was the breakdown of that amount?
Yeah, so what we have, this is based on the Migration Policy Institute estimate of it, and what happens because the ramp up of these immigration enforcement has been so rapid. A lot of what the Trump administration has been doing has been going to either private companies, private prison companies, which run prisons in places like Michigan, where the detainees are taken, or they contract with local governments. Now, in both cases, those are prohibited in Illinois. So there are many places in, for example, Indiana, that have actually even built or expanded their own facilities in order to meet demand of the business. And so what happens is ICE pays them, a set amount per detainee, which covers, all the overhead that wouldn't be involved in housing and monitoring them.
Daniel, did you guys find out, did they have a budget that they wanted to stay under for this whole Operation Midway Blitz, or was it like okay, free for all, you spend what you spend?
I really wish we knew. That's one of the questions that we asked ICE and the Border Patrol. They basically didn't provide any information to us. But we do sort of have an idea that of the scope that they were going for. And just to give you an idea, had the Guard been deployed, the number of people on the streets would have been like 2 or 3 times as many as what we saw with just the Border Patrol and ICE. And you're seeing an even larger operation now happening in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. So they have, clearly they have like a special team, but it's not clear to the public what their budget is. They give a lot more money from Congress because of a bill passed this summer. So they are not short of money, but we don't know what their budget is.
Daniel, I want to go back to something else that you said. So at the top, we said $59 million, but you said that you expect that amount is even more. Is that because it was very difficult to get your hands on real physical proof of how much was being spent here? Were you kind of in the dark? And how did you even come up with the number 59? Where did you get that number? Because I know in our reporting, we've had a really hard time getting the government to just hand over documents with proof of certain things.
We had the same difficulties. I will say the 59 million comes from a variety of sources. We were able to, for example, one small detail. A lot of people complain about the helicopters. I live in D.C., where the helicopters, when they had their immigration search here, were constant. So we tried to track down, okay, how many Black Hawk helicopters, which we know people saw, or just regular ICE helicopters that we have. And we were able to find dozens of flights that they conducted, mostly out of DuPage Airport. And then we were able to find other government documents as to how much typically those cost per hour of flight time. So that was one way that we did that. And I mentioned the detention. We knew how many people were detained. We knew what the typical costs were. We know about how many people, we have some sense of how many Border Patrol and ICE agents were deployed, at least at some point, because of court records. And then we also know what the government rate is at local hotels, which is another thing that's been in the news lately. So the reasons we don't have the complete scope is there are other agencies involved. So the Trump administration has used other agencies. There's HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, the Coast Guard, DEA, FBI, and all those ATF. I think they've all been part of, for example, patrolling Broadview, which you see on screen. And so we don't know how many people were tasked from other places, what work was not done elsewhere. And we don't know how long this is going to go on. They have emphasized that this is not over yet, and that the enforcement will continue. So obviously, as those continue, the numbers will grow.
You know, I was able to read your article last night, and I'm trying to jog my memory. And I think as a viewer, you're always like, all right, well, how much are these people getting paid? Because you know that there's so many agents around. Plus, you know about this overtime that's going on too. What do we know the number of what the hourly rate is for some of these agents?
We don't specifically know for the agents because, again, we hadn't got the detail. State government would probably tell you a little bit more. But we have an idea of what federal agents make. There's a very strict system for federal employees as to how much everybody makes, depending on benefits. So what we did is we went with what is sort of the second tier, like somebody with a bachelor's degree, what do they make? And according to the Border Patrol, that typical amount would be, with overtime and all of these bonuses, about $75,000 a year. I suspect that's low because if you're being deployed away from home and on the streets all this time, you're probably backing up a lot of overtime. But again, we were going with numbers that we found from the government that we thought were pretty defensible because it came from them and not speculating.
Daniel, I must ask you, ultimately, who's paying for all of this?
Well, all this is from the federal government. So you and I are paying, through your tax dollars. And of course, there's more to it too. There's, if say the state police helped out at Broadview, this doesn't include that. So yeah, it's you and me taxpayers that are paying all this money.
What do you make of, one thing that you said there was not being able to get a clear picture of exactly how much was being spent because that information was not readily available. What do you make of that, being a journalist? If you're doing this and you say you're doing this for the betterment of the country, why not have those documents on full display for everybody to see?
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating, and I think, more transparency actually helps build public confidence in your operations. We, meaning me and lots of other journalists, including yourself, have looked for more information on who's been detained, where they've been taken, and we're like several months behind, and some of that don't have granular detail, and then it's the operations too. I mean, one important reason why you look at the money is to get an idea of the scope of what they're doing. Okay, like, well, oh yeah, how much did the helicopters cost? Now the Coast Guard is using helicopters. That was new from after we did the reporting. And then what are their priorities? What are they spending money on? Are they spending it on tear gas or blankets for detainees? So that's why it's really important to look at the money and to get that information from the governments that we cover, because it shows their priorities and it builds public confidence that money is being spent wisely.
And I could kind of see this as a never-ending story for you, right? True. As things continue to happen here in our state, here out of state too. You're probably working on kind of new updated numbers, aren't you?
Well, there's always something more to look at, and we're definitely keeping an eye on it. And if we see more, we're definitely going to be on top of all aspects of these immigration enforcement actions.
Well, we appreciate your journalism and your hard work, because we know you have to keep digging to get what you want, especially during these times. Daniel Vach, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a happy New Year as well.
All right, thank you. Okay, coming up, we are talking finally about really FBI, the workings of what happened in Venezuela. And now that we know that Maduro is on U.S. soil, really what that means. We're going to have an expert right after this break. Welcome back to Chicago Now. This is a really important topic because it's active. It's happening right now. We've watched as everything has unfolded in Venezuela and now back here on U.S. soil. We want to bring in an expert to talk about this. Really some historic stuff happening. Is former FBI counterterrorism and counterintelligence operative Eric O'Neill. Thank you so much for your time and being on our show today.
Happy New Year, and thanks for having me on.
Let's talk about this. So I know you say that this operation, it closely mirrors the 1989 capture of Noriega in Panama. How so, and then what was different?
Well, it's more like it than anything else, but this is one of the most unique operations that I've ever seen. Essentially, if you want to boil it down, it was one of the most intricately planned and expensive arrests that we've ever seen. If you think about it, what happened was, after months of planning by the CIA being on the ground, some of the best intelligence work I've seen in some time, locating where Nicolás Maduro, as far as the U.S. is concerned, former illegitimate leader of Venezuela, they were able to develop a pattern of life, know exactly where he was at any point in time, and then a military operation laid the groundwork for helicopters to come in. So over 150 planes from 20 different bases and aircraft around the region launched a bombing run in military bases in Venezuela. They were able to use cyber attacks to turn the lights off in Caracas and shut down early warning and radar detection systems to make it safe for helicopters to bring Delta Force units, who were protection, and FBI hostage rescue team agents in to serve a warrant on Nicolás Maduro and his wife, capture him, and then exfiltrate out of the country to the USS Iwo Jima, and then bring him to Brooklyn, where he spent his first day in court yesterday.
You know, it's interesting to hear it all laid out kind of in one sentence, because you're right, you know, it was really complicated. But still, Eric, you know, people are saying that the Trump administration did this the wrong way. Would you agree with that?
You know, if you're looking at a comparison to what happened in Panama, this was much different. In Panama, we invaded Panama, removed Noriega, and then stayed and placed someone else, the actual duly elected person in power. Here, the entire operation was about 2 hours and 20 minutes. There are no more boots on the ground. And essentially, the regime is still in place. So it's not a regime change. It's more of a removing the de facto leader, allowing the regime to continue with U.S. oversight to make sure they don't overstep. I don't know if they could have done this any different and still have Maduro there in power.
Yeah, it's very interesting how all of this has played out. I want to ask you, though, about this part of it, because you said how obviously this was planned out, very calculated. Based on what you've seen so far, do you believe, because I do know there was a bounty on the head of Maduro, do you believe that someone that is from there, from Venezuela, assisted the U.S. government in this capture?
It's certainly possible. So we do know from some of the reporting that has come out of the White House that the CIA, they began in the summer to create what I said, a pattern of light. That's where you learn everything about your target. I used to do this here for the FBI in the U.S. against domestic terrorists and spies. You learn everything about them, their likes, their desires, where they live, where they go, where they work, what their security team is. The CIA learned everything about Maduro and apparently had a very well-placed source near Maduro who was giving them information, and that is very good intelligence work. You want to recruit an asset who's going to provide you that information. Now, I don't know if that asset got the $50 million bounty or not. I'm sure that that's not going to be known. That could put that person in Venezuela in a lot of danger because the secret police are still active in Venezuela, and I have heard from people in Venezuela that they are actively trying to hunt anyone who helped the CIA.
You know, and right now, I guess, we're probably going to hear, honestly, for the next couple of months, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, this kind of like a honeymoon period, right? Like people, most of the people in Venezuela might be happy. Okay, Maduro's out. There's obviously going to be some that are not happy. What do you think is going to happen? Maybe, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months from now. Do you think there might be some civil unrest that's going to come about since this change?
I think that I think that there would be civil unrest had the United States, for example, taken the duly elected president of Venezuela, which would have been Machado or Gonzalez, right after Machado steps aside. There was an election. It turns out Nicolás Maduro really lost, but stayed in power, right? And just installed that person in power. I think then maybe there would have been arrest, particularly with the military and the special police. You would have had some sort of insurgency, and it could have been a mess like Iraq. By letting the regime stay in power as a de facto government, as long as the United States is providing oversight, that allows for some sort of peaceful transition. But the proof is going to be the future. And as you said, in the next 3-4 months, what happens? So there are 3 things that I think that Venezuela must do. Otherwise, we've got a problem. First of all, they need to free political prisoners. They've been grabbing political prisoners, including American citizens that they are holding illegally. They need to free them. 2, they got to put into place the conditions for a functioning democracy. That means that they need to reduce the abuse that they're doing in the country. They need to allow more expressions of freedom, which might be protests against the current government allowed to happen. And they need to pave the way for future elections. If these 3 things don't happen, then I think that the regime right now is going to have a problem with the United States, and that could result in boots being back on the ground in Venezuela.
No, that's a very important point. Before we started this show, you weren't here for this, but I was just telling Gabby and our viewing audience that I was right next door to Venezuela when all of this happened. Unfortunately, I was in Colombia, and there are a lot of Venezuelans that are now living in Colombia that fled Maduro's rule. They felt like he was reigning as a dictator. And in fact, I talked to somebody that was saying what's also needed is more of economic freedom. They were telling me there are people that live there that make $3 a month. And there's no way to sustain a life off of that, even though it's a country obviously full of oil and very wealthy in that way. So very interesting that you say that. I want to go back to something that you said. You talked about kind of like profiling Maduro. When that happens, like understanding what he likes, what he doesn't like, where he goes, is that someone that is visually like eyes on the people at all times that kind of monitors them? How does that work?
That's an excellent question. So there are a number of different methodologies. The ones that I can talk about and that we know about is that they were using active surveillance. So they had eyes on him. They were using covert drone surveillance. So drones that are way high up in the air and are watching him and his movements. They had an asset, someone close to Maduro who was reporting. And then there are other techniques that they can use to keep him in pocket, to know exactly where he's going. Technology and things that would get me in trouble if I talked about.
I know.
But those three things alone are giving you a very good sense of that individual. And once again, it was really important to know his movements because the entire operation would have been called off if he wasn't in pocket in that safe house where they knew he was going to be, and they had a plan to get in and exfiltrate him. Well, one thing I should have said, Delta built that house, built Maduro's home in a stage to the exact measurements and trained on it. So the Delta Force operatives knew every nook and cranny. In fact, they probably knew that house better than Maduro did, so that when they went in, they would know exactly where he would run, where that safe room that they tried to get into was, and intercept him before he could escape.
Oh my gosh, Eric O'Neill, I think we could talk to you for another 10 minutes. That is so interesting, the things that we can learn from you and on just about this one situation. We're going to have you back. I know that you often contribute to our station, so thank you very much for that. Thank you for your time today, and we'll talk to you next time on this topic.
I'm sure.
It's my pleasure, and we'll talk soon.
All right, see you soon. And hey, thank you guys for tuning in on this hump day. I had to think about it for a second. It was a pleasure to see you. This is my first time this year being back.
First time this year. We missed you. I'm going to tell you that.
It was a good time.
And the sun is finally coming out. I'm sorry if you were interrupted by some of the honking and sirens that were coming by right here on Michigan Avenue and Lake. Hey, we'll see you tomorrow on Thursday. Have a great day, everyone.
Update your home for the new year.